There are things that can keep teachers awake at night. Conflict between students, teachers or parents, wellbeing red flags and moments of crisis. In schools, educators must respond effectively to these challenges in an ever-shifting landscape. In this series, teachers, school leaders and wellbeing practitioners take on curveball scenarios from everyday school life, and in the process, highlight positive approaches to wellbeing. I'm your host Mick Walsh, and this is Trials for Teachers. Today, I am again joined by Shane Nankervis. He is an experienced teacher and pastoral care specialist working in secondary school contexts. Hello, Shane. How are you?
Hello. I'm very good today. Thanks, Michael. Mick?
Are you ready?
I'm ready today. I'm on today. I'm switched on today. I'm feeling good.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Please note that the following scenario is fictional and any similarity to events in any real school context, past or present, is purely coincidental. I've got a messy one for you today, Mr. Nankervis. It's the end of a school day on a Friday. A disagreement between Year 7 students escalates rapidly when Campbell shoves another student, Phillip, against a locker. Phillip responds by swinging a school bag, hitting Campbell in the shoulder, and a grappling match ensues. A crowd of other Year 7 students gathers, some filming on their phones, while others are shouting encouragement. A staff member, assuming a teacher in the area, eventually intervenes and settles the situation.
Right. So Friday at the end of the day.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
Great timing. So there's been a shove, a hit with a bag, and some grappling. So I think the first thing we have to do here is obviously de-escalate the situation. So ensure that the boys are separated in a really calm, controlled way. There'd be no point going in there, sort of boots and all, and yelling and screaming and what are you doing? And even though maybe on a Friday you could be tempted to do that, but making sure that you keep really controlled and calm and doing your best to separate those students. And obviously, we can't be touching the students, we can't be grabbing them, but maybe trying to get a bit of space in between the two boys. Potentially you might step in between them or something like that. It's a bit hard to know off the scenario, but I think you try and get a bit of space between them just to de-escalate and settle them down. Take a breath, boys, just move apart.
Yeah, and they might need someone to give them an option to de-escalate, which is, can you please go this way? I need you to go this way for a minute.
Yep.
And I think that allows them the space to kind of back down from that moment. And I think what you've highlighted there is that calm de-escalation.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned before yelling and ramping things up. I think we've hopefully the listeners have got the idea that the calm approach, and it can be firm and calm, that's for sure. It doesn't have to be like, it can be firm and calm, but we need to just stay calm in those situations.
Yes. The research suggests that students will take their cues from the adults who are in the room. So if we are showing them in a calm way how to resolve a dispute as well, is pretty powerful. Mm-hmm. And if the students involved, but even the students who are watching can take their cues from that going forward, which I think is helpful. But you've said, Mr. Nan, the timing is awful. Tell me why the timing is so bad.
The timing is bad because everyone wants to go home for a start. If it's Friday afternoon, everyone wants to go. And the timing is particularly bad because we can't follow it up. So we just really need to put in some strategies in place to de-escalate, to calm them down, probably to inform the parents that something's happened and to make sure they're safe. Like, we really need to make sure they haven't been hurt. Like, if someone's been hurt and they're like, the hit with the bags caused some real distress, like, that's another whole issue there that we'd have to deal with. And obviously the health centre or school nurse or whatever we'd have to get. But assuming that they're, okay, and there's no one being actually really physically injured, I think that trying to recruit some support from another teacher would be really important as well. So hopefully you're not there on your own. Hopefully we can get another teacher involved, because we've got a couple of things. Separating the boys, I don't think we're going to drag them into the same room and try and go through, unpack it at that point. They probably need to get on a bus, or they're getting in a car, or they've got to go as well. So putting them under pressure and trying to make them stay for too long could perhaps heighten them as well, and just try and blow it all up again. But separating them very quickly if we can. And then you've got the issue with the people, I think you said, with the filming on a phone. Yeah, so there's another whole element that could go wrong as well. So last thing we want is pictures being distributed on social media or messaging or however it plays out.
We were talking about that one before, and in that moment, you can't grab a student's phone and start flicking through.
No.
It needs to be done with permission. But again, firmly, you would be requesting that the students who you're aware who had filmed, or if it was a group, you'd say, if anyone was filming, what I need you to do now is this. I'm asking you to open your camera roll. I'm asking you to delete the footage of this. And this is for your benefit so that we can resolve this in a productive way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, you can't be sure of that. You can't be sure that they would do, but I would probably be very explicit and say if we hear of anything happening over the weekend and if this image is distributed, that obviously that will come back to you, group of 4 boys or whoever, because that's the only way it could get distributed. So I would be calm, but I would be probably very, very firm in that there would be follow-up and consequences if that image got distributed.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And in that moment when you're there with the students and you know that you are short on time, what you're really aiming to do is to kind of set up your Monday, aren't you?
Yep.
And you're trying to get this in as best shape as you can to get there. And the phone call that you don't want to make is, I've kept your son or daughter behind in any case or any scenarios it might be, and they've also missed the bus.
Yep.
So I've created, I'm giving you 2 sets of bad news here. So if you have a limited amount of time, I suppose, as you've said, checking in that the student's fine and applying first aid as a teacher, or if you're lucky enough to have any other sort of supports at the school, you might separate the students and get a sense of what had occurred and let them know that it is serious and that there needs to be some follow-up on it, and that you're going to make contact with home.
Absolutely. And, I think you can, you say it's bad timing, and now I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it a little bit. Like, I think maybe it's not bad timing. Maybe it's okay, because probably if it was a Tuesday lunchtime or whatever it might be, you're probably thinking, I need to fix this now. I'm going to get a statement. Maybe the weekend provides a chance for a clear head and some calm from the student. Perhaps, hopefully, from home they get some supportive, some good guidance from home as well, and you've got a supportive parent that can kind of unpack it with them a little bit, and hopefully maybe you get a much more measured student walk in the door on Monday morning that you can have a really clear, calm conversation with, rather than a heightened state on the Friday. So I think maybe it's an advantage that you're going to get a more calm, collected student with parent buy-in on Monday, potentially.
That is a good way to think about it. And as far as when we send the students off, the periphery students, once they'd maybe deleted the footage, or you might say, look, this is something that I might need to speak to you with on Monday. I hope you have a good weekend, but we might have to revisit this conversation so that we can support everyone there.
Yep.
With the 2 boys who were involved in the incident at the lockers, I think it is a little bit different. And I don't know if you're a fan of the EPL soccer, Mr. Nan, or the European soccer.
Probably not.
No.
Soccer's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah,
Even
right.
PE teacher, I was actually saying that this morning to my son. He said, Dad, what sports? And I said, soccer's my weak link, mate.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure you know this, but the rival fans in European soccer, sometimes the rivalry is so heated and things get heated during the game that they actually have a schedule of when supporters leave the stadium and the other supporters stay in the stadium.
Yep.
So I guess what I'm suggesting, the link I'm making here, is that you don't want to send those 2 boys out at the same time.
No, absolutely not.
And if you can, if one's going in one direction, you might say, all right, mate, I need you to head off that way. Thank you. And wait till that person has cleared the building, and then I need you to head off that way. You don't want them to reconvene and resume hostilities out in the yard.
Out in the playground, potentially the boys and their phone hanging around. No, exactly right. So if you've got a way to ensure that they are getting where they need to be, I think that's pretty important as well.
So again, teachers are busy people.
Yep.
At the end of this Friday afternoon, and it's probably the last thing you want to be doing, but you've got to reach out to home. And again, if a student goes home and says, I've had this incident at the locker and someone hit me or pushed me or whatever, you may have a parent email that night. You might have an email on the weekend. It might build up, and they might feel really enraged by the Monday morning.
Yeah, they could.
So given that you haven't had time to explore the incident in detail, really what they need is to know that you've got an understanding that an incident has taken place, you're investigating it, and here are some steps that I've taken.
Yep, absolutely. And that we'll follow it up on Monday with both students. Looking at could be, and then when you get the both students together, you're thinking, has there been any past friction? Is there anything in the past? You might be asking a few questions. Again, that idea of data, looking up and on your whatever record system you have at your school, has there been any incidents between these two boys before? Or was it simply that, one opened his locker door and hit the other one in the head of the locker, and then it sort of, who knows, and it escalated and it was sort of quite simple. Or it could be quite complicated where there's been a history of, a bit of friction between these two boys. So trying to unpack and work out the best way forward requires a bit of work.
Yeah. And so it's Monday, and ideally what you don't do is let these boys just kind of exist, attend the same class.
No.
Go to recess, and then have a conversation after that. That really needs to be done early.
Yep.
And again, as we've probably mentioned before, if you're not in a position to be able to do that or to conduct meetings or interviews, and clearly at this point, if you're a teacher that's encountered this problem, you would have escalated this. You would have support, hopefully, of your year level coordinators or people within the pastoral chain at your school.
Yep.
So it's not something you have to roll with alone as a classroom teacher.
No, yeah. I think if you're a classroom teacher at that point, I feel like you've probably done your bit. You've provided, you've de-escalated it, you've contacted the parents, you've sort of contacted whoever it is, your year level coordinator or whoever it might be, given your perspective on what happened, any past history that you may know about. And I think it's probably in the hands of the year level coordinator or whoever it is now to sort of conduct the rest of that investigation and work through what's happened. I think the classroom teachers probably almost not out of that now, but they've done a great job, and they're sort of almost handing it on.
Yeah, and
knowing that they're there if you need them. And
probably the opposite of that. We've reflected on maybe a good way to handle it, to set it up for a Monday. A bad way would be, I saw a teacher contacting a year level coordinator on Sunday night and saying, by the way, Friday afternoon, so-and-so hit so-and-so. Now I've got emails from parents. Here you go. Can you sort of look after this one or manage this one on the Monday?
You can't just dump it. You can't just drop it in their box.
Because you're fighting a much harder battle. You're sort of going uphill at that point, aren't you?
Yeah.
To sort of undo some of those early kind of interventions.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to that Monday and when you are interviewing students, we've always talked about doing that in a supportive way for students, making sure that you've potentially got a colleague with you to kind of verify the conversation, that it was done in a way that is supportive. You've given the student an opportunity to give their perspective, and I think that's important, particularly for parents, to know that that's occurred.
Yep.
And I guess, Mr. Nan, what we will often get, we've talked about this before, is that students take the path of least resistance, and they'll want to kind of make themselves appear that they're in the right, potentially, in a situation.
Yep. Paint themselves in a good light. Yep.
So between Campbell and Phillip, we might have some things that are common, but we might also have a very different version of events, particularly around how it started.
Yep. Yeah. So then you might want to, maybe some of those kids that have filmed it potentially, or they would have been, they would have been perhaps involved and saw what happened. You might want to ask their perspective about how that unfolded as well, and try and join the dots about what is actually true and what's not. And it's probably somewhere in the middle, I suspect. So yeah, trying to get, again, as many perspectives as you can on the incident.
Yeah. You've got a lot of entry points to kind of figure out what's happened.
Yeah.
And that can be time consuming.
Yep.
But those additional conversations can actually paint a real clear picture. It can actually help you out in terms of your process.
Yeah.
The what you sort of boil down to, my perception is, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that, despite differences in stories, generally there are some agreed events that you can work with.
Some commonalities that have...
Yeah. And ultimately, what we're really aware of is that students have been involved in an altercation. One point we didn't mention earlier is perhaps when you are looking at a reel on a phone or a video, that in itself might provide some evidence. But what we're assuming here is that this is taking place sort of after the fact.
Yeah.
And in terms of how you handle that, you have to do that very discreetly. Again, you might be asking the student to briefly send you a copy of that to a school email address if it was something that you felt would be helpful in terms of the investigation. But we don't want to be dealing with private content on a student's phone.
No.
And if you do receive any of that sort of a video like that, it needs to be managed in line with your school policies and how you process that.
Yeah.
So we've got the agreed events, and where do we go in terms of consequences? Because that is a slippery slope sometimes.
The education piece is huge in this, that we don't assault other people, that we don't touch other people. I think there's a really big educational piece for both students in there in whatever led to that physical violence or whatever the reaction was, perhaps the person who reacted, what's a better way of managing that. So there's some big educational pieces in there. And I guess it's a little bit up to your school policy, I guess, and where you draw the line on what physical assault or physical contact constitutes. So it could be that they get suspended, depending on how it was initiated, what happened, that there's a very significant consequence with an educational piece on that.
And I think that it is tricky. It is really tricky to navigate. And it's also really tricky to bring parents along with consequences sometimes, because parents and students will often want to talk about, well, this is what happened at the start. It's been boiling for years, it's been boiling since last Tuesday, and this is the trigger, and that person started it. And that's fair.
That is fair.
But when you boil it down to agreed events and you boil it down to the actions that have taken place and the opportunities to actually de-escalate, and that's where the education comes in. Did you have an option to step back before you threw the bag at him?
Yes.
Did you have an option to not respond in the way that you did after that occurred? So
it's a coaching process, isn't it? Coaching them to unpack. And again, we've talked with year 9s to 14, we're talking about 12-year-olds here that aren't, their brain's not cognitively formed properly. Like they're making decisions that aren't always rational. And it's our job as teachers and educators to, again, give them that toolkit and that understanding of what might you do better next time? What was wrong about that? What could you do better? This is the outcome here. This is what's happened. Had you taken a breath and stepped back or just ignored or whatever it might be, in schools, we're not in the bubble. So if this happened in, the supermarket across the road, what would that look like? And making them understand that, like, what would that look like out in the community if you actually did that? And we don't operate in a separate legal system in a school. Like there's still an assault's an assault, or physical violence is physical violence. It doesn't matter if you're in the supermarket or if you're at a school. I think students need to understand that we're not in a separate institution where there's different rules apply, and it's I was only in school. It was in the I was in the rough and tumble of school, or it was just no, I don't think so.
But what is offered in an educational environment is the learning that comes out of something like that.
Yeah, there's much more learning.
And so that's an important component of it. I suppose in terms of a consequence, there is more value if a student's just sitting in a space and contemplating life decisions and just sort of sitting there, probably annoyed about the fact that they're there, probably still feeling upset about the incident. The consequence itself needs to have some sort of reflective capacity, and there needs to be a check-in later, and these boys clearly require some sort of intervention so that we can restore the relationship, we can mediate, and we can have assurances about how we operate going forward, which probably takes us into that ongoing support space.
In
terms of if you've seen this incident take place and you're someone who maybe has, as a pastoral care leader or a homeroom teacher, the boys, maybe they might share a locker space together. There's probably some adjustments you can make to their day-to-day environment that might provide some space.
Yeah, like that. I think it's a pretty obvious one that you're going to try and separate their space as much as you can. So separate their locker, separate them in the classroom if they have classes, make sure that you give them space, basically. So we just need to give them space and limit the interactions that they have, limit walking past each other, limit, interactions at lockers, limit spaces at classroom tables, not grouping them together. Like if you're going on a camp or if you're going on an excursion or even in PE class, for example, you might just, they're not on the same team or like however it is that it looks like that you're not grouping them together, I think is a really important part. Just until, that's not to say that that'll happen forever, but in the short term, just allowing it some time to breathe and give those boys some space from each other.
Fantastic.
I think is important.
And we also, probably as a final point, you mentioned about sort of making sure that we record and document, and we speak about this all the time. But working with your line managers, working with your policies is really important, particularly in an incident like this. And looping in teachers and pastoral care practitioners or people that are going to be engaging with that student and just checking in, are they going okay?
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing.
Yeah.
For a kid to have that happen, and maybe their sense of safety with the environment is compromised for a little while, so they might need some additional support.
I think what we can't have, and I think this idea is decreasing, but the idea that boys will be boys, I think that's not, that's, I was just a bit of a push and shove at like, boys come, fellas don't do that. Like, I think we're not in that world anymore. That's not what we want. We need better education. We need everyone to feel safe at school. Other students need to know that they're safe and that won't happen to them. So, the consequence sometimes is as much as it's for them, but it's a clear message to the rest of the cohort or the rest of the school that that behaviour that we do not accept, that breaks the values of our school. Yeah, I think that is quite important. But I still think, unfortunately, we've got this boys will be boys attitude a little bit and a tendency. It'd be really easy to brush over that and just sort of say, it was a bit of a push and shove at the locker and just boys can't, let's not do that next time. But then the next time it escalates and there's a punch, and then the next time, and then someone else thinks it's okay. So that's not what we want, and that's not. I would think that most schools in their values that they would not accept that. Yeah,
and that's about consistency. And the last point I'd add is that there's a lot of really great research that leads towards, how can we actually build a behaviour curriculum, and how can we educate students on how we carry ourselves in our spaces? Yeah. So, for example, what does finishing up at the end of the day look like?
Yeah, I was. You read my mind. I was thinking about that, and it wouldn't be. I'm thinking it might be that the whole, if it was year 7, that the whole at a year level assembly or something like that, like when you've got all the group together, that you might unpack that, and you're not going to do it straight away though, and highlight the issue. Like that, if it happened on the Friday and you've got a level assembly on the Tuesday, maybe that's not the space for that because it highlights those two boys. And I think maybe give it a little bit more time. But unpacking what does it look like to leave, what is acceptable, what does it look like, giving students like a template to work from. Like we assume that they know, like a fire drill, we assume they know how to line up, we assume they know how to do all sorts of stuff, but we probably need to model most things because they don't know. And I would argue that students are less inclined to pick up on the subtle social cues now because of social media. They don't read social cues as well as they used to, in my opinion. But we really need to be explicit and model behaviour. And it might be that you walk them through, this is what it looks like when we leave. Like you might actually, that might be worthwhile doing that as an activity. Like we're not just all running out the door on a Friday, shoving our locker. Like, maybe there's an actual process for that.
This is how we carry ourselves when we're in this space. This is how we transition from this space to another space.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's a great point, and a great point to finish on there, Mr. Nan. Just a little bit of a recap. We talked about, firstly, the main priority being containing, de-escalating, and modelling calm with the students. We talked about kind of getting ahead of some of the potential problems such as social media sharing of videos, how we work with students on getting permission to delete reels from their phone, rolls from their phone. Sorry, the terminology is not quite there. Maybe with those key students and in that Friday afternoon time frame, checking that they're okay, ensuring that they're all right, but making sure that we communicate home to say, we understand an incident has occurred, we're investigating it, and we will be in contact with you on Monday morning. Making sure that Monday morning contact is early, that Monday's been set up well, getting support as you need it within line with your school policy and support from colleagues to manage it, getting that boiling down to agreed events and managing consequences on the back of that. And probably highlighting to students that we always have opportunities to de-escalate. There is self-defense, but there's also opportunities to take the high road.
Have other strategies,
We also talked about that clearly for there's mediation and restorative aspects to this, but for ongoing support, those students will need space. That could be within the sharing of lockers. We might create some room to allow that relationship to repair, to ensure the student safety, and that we absolutely monitor this. And then we got to this idea of behaviour curriculum, which I think is really important. And that really, the work that you do in that space can mitigate or prevent some of these issues from happening.
Yeah. If your school's got a good behaviour curriculum, the consequence probably in this should be clear. Like, it should be fairly clear cut about what happens, I feel. So I know a lot of schools probably fall short there on having, we have, if you take drugs at school, you're suspended, it's clear cut. Like, I think we could get to the point where we have a lot more behaviour management strategies and curriculum where there is some sort of a bit more clear cut, or that there's a clear road forward, which is maybe not always the case.
Yeah, and I think that within the state system and many schools are really onto that now.
Yeah,
and it really helps us.
One thing I think we've missed in there, and I was just thinking about it when you did the recap, is that the boys that filmed and the people around it just being really squashing any dialogue around it. So the risk would be that they come in Monday and they want to fuel it and keep it going and talk about it. I think that's really important to be vigilant around that and kind of quash any conversations around it re-escalating or just the talk around it. It's not helpful, and we need to make sure that we quash that fairly quickly.
And there's one more aspect to that, because this is a messy situation.
Yeah, it is very messy.
The human response nowadays to something's occurring in front of me, I'm going to get my phone out. I'm going to film it. I mean, unpacking that with students about, are you providing assistance? Are you supporting the people involved? We don't want you to get hurt as well, but is getting the phone out and recording it the best way to solve this problem?
They don't have social media now, do they?
Allegedly.
Under 16?
Allegedly.
That shouldn't be a problem anymore. There's no social media. It should be easy, clear cut that on.
That just opens another whole conversation.
Is that another episode?
That could be another episode.
Yeah.
Look, thank you, and contact us through our socials and have your say. Now, Mr. Nan, I want to finish off by hearing your wellbeing wind down, something that you do that, after you've had a busy day at work, just kind of brings you back to yourself.
Yeah, my wife loves this one because if I get home and I've had a busy day and my head's full, I kind of don't want to talk about anything at all. I just want to I'm happy to be in my own space. So what I'll do, I'll get home, and please don't laugh at me for this. Don't judge, please.
Okay.
So I like to clean stuff up. So like I might vacuum, I might get the stick vac out, I might just get the Windex out and give a bit of a tidy up. And there's two things in that. I don't have to think about anything. It's just a process driven thing, and there's no right or wrong in it. You just do it. So it just lets me clear my head. Yeah. And the second thing is, particularly on a Friday afternoon, it sets me up for the weekend. I think, good, now I don't have to do that on the weekend. So
right, your mind functions better in a sort of a uncluttered, tidy space. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I'm not real big on clutter, so I just like it.
I'm going to say that's a rare kind of approach. But
can you see how my wife actually likes that?
I can see how she would appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's very helpful, but
she doesn't like it when I say, "Can you vacuum?" I say, "Can you lift your feet up?" And I'm with a vacuum cleaner. She doesn't like that overly. So I try to avoid that one. I've learnt that social coaching. I've learnt that's not a good idea.
That is a good habit, though, Mr. Nan. I will say that. Yeah. I'm going to go for something a little bit different here. Is the strategic snooze button, and what do I mean by that? I mean that. If you have a little bit more time than you need on a given morning, let's say you've got a 6:30 alarm or wherever it is, I'm sure you get up earlier than that, Mr. Nan.
5.
Okay, that's ridiculous. But if you feel like you've got a 10-minute buffer zone, you know what? Hit that snooze button. Take that extra 10 minutes if that's what you need in the morning.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to try that, but I like it.
Yeah, we're very different, aren't we?
Yeah. No, I would go back to sleep. Oh, would I or not? No.
It's risky business.
It's high risk.
It is high risk.
It's a high risk business, that one. Because what if you're there for an hour?
Press the wrong button and you're in all sorts of issues. You're not making that Monday meeting with the kids to resolve the issue. So, yeah. But look, to all the people who hold the line in our schools, while you're all busy taking care of others, make sure to spare some time for yourself. Until next time, this has been Trials for Teachers.